Sorry, there's lots of buttons I have to push to get this going. But hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm happy to see you all. This is honestly the highlight of my week to be here on Thursday mornings. And today we are going to pick it up on the chapter How It Works, which is on page 58 of your big book. So if you recall, we went through the first. So we did the qualifications to work the steps, right? If you've decided you want what we have, willing to go to any lengths to get it. If you've admitted you're powerless over food, your life is unmanageable. And now we are almost done with step two, how it works. We'll do a little bit of step two, and then we'll move right into step three. So if you have your big book, we are on page 58. And it starts, rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. So if we want to guarantee success, we want to thoroughly follow this path. Now, sometimes people say when they're looking for a sponsor, well, there was one person available, so it must be God that was that person. And I say, no, no, we have an obligation to ourselves to interview our potential sponsors, unless we've heard them before and we know them, to make sure that they are thoroughly following this path. And this path, in a nutshell, is surrender to God, clean up our past, and help others. So we won't fail if we follow this path. And that's why we study this book. When people come around, I tell them, you don't need to get a PhD in Big Book right away. You need to just do the work. Then once we're through the steps, we can deep dive in. And that's actually how Recovery Jam got started. I had a few sponsees and said, I'll work with y'all individually, but one night a week we'll come together and I'll do a chapter of the Big Book. So the most important thing is to do it, but obviously we want to learn it and know what we're doing. So it says those who don't recover. Okay, so now they're telling us if you're someone who doesn't recover, here's why. Or a sponsee you have who isn't recovering. Those who don't recover are people who can't or won't do this program. Either they can't because maybe they're like mentally incapacitated, or they won't. Okay, who are these people? Usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. And I would say those are the people who can't. If they are unable, constitutionally unable means like medically unable. They don't know the true from the false. I don't know if it's like they hear voices, but they can't be honest. That's not us. We're people who didn't want to be honest because we didn't want to face consequences. It says there are such unfortunates. They are naturally incapable. So now here's what we have to do. Grasping and developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty. So rigorous honesty is being honest in what I say. And it's also honest in like dishonesty by omission is also dishonesty. So if I don't tell someone something that they have a right to know, even if they don't ask me directly, I'm being dishonest. We have to be rigorously honest. It says their chances are less than average, not good odds. It says there are those who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. So if someone has, I'm trying to think of, they say depression or bipolar or something like that, right? A mental disorder. As long as you have the capacity to be honest, you can recover. So for me, if I'm sponsoring someone who says, well, I have depression or I have bipolar or something else, I don't get involved with that. For one thing, I never, ever, ever would get involved in a person's medication and say, well, if you work the steps, go off your medication and you'll be fine. That is a medical issue between that person and their doctor. So don't get involved in medication. But as long as someone can be honest, and someone with depression can still be honest and can still recover. They may be able to lessen their medicine after, they may not. I leave that 100% to them and their doctor. But so we can recover even if we have a diagnosis, right? That's great news. What I always ask my sponsees at this point is there any dishonesty in your life? With your food or with anything else? Are you cheating on your taxes? Are you cheating on your husband? Is there any area where you're not being honest? And if so, we got to deal with it and clean it up. Okay. And then they tell us our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we are like now. What we used to be like, I don't know, train wrecks, living on self-will. What happened? God happened. And what we are like now, living in the fourth dimension. And then they give, remember, we've talked about this, the qualifications to work the steps. We have to make two decisions. We have to decide we want what they have. And what do they have? A spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, a transformation that's described on page 25 in that paragraph, the great fact. If you make a decision, you want that, and make a decision, you're willing to go to any lengths to get it, then and only then are you ready to take certain steps. So willingness doesn't have to mean a desire, right? Like very few people sit down and say, oh, I can't wait to write my fourth step. I can't wait to make these hard amends, right? Willingness means we've made a decision to put our will in action to do this work, even when we don't want to. And it says, okay, if you've decided that, then you're ready to work these steps. At some of these, we balked. So balking or not wanting to doesn't disqualify us, right? I could make a decision to do something I don't like. We thought we can find an easier, softer way. And we can all list those, right? Like therapy, going back in the food, trying a pay and weigh program. They say, but we could not. We beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. We tried to hold on to our old ideas, so we should look at our old ideas. Do we have old ideas like, if I don't eat for a year, then I'll be able to eat what I want? Like, look at them. The result was nil, nothing, until we let go absolutely. And then that next sentence is so interesting. Remember that we deal with alcohol or food, cunning, baffling, powerful. Okay, the word cunning means having skill in achieving a goal by, well, they say cunning, by like devious methods. Baffling and powerful. They're talking about food, like a bag of chips or a carton of ice cream. They're talking about like a common noun. How could food be cunning, baffling, and powerful? It doesn't make sense, right? But it's like there's a negative spiritual force behind this illness that's cunning, baffling, and powerful, this illness. Without help, it is too much for us. Remember, it's like I have 1 unit of power and this illness has 100 units of power. I don't have a choice. So I need a power that has at least like 101 units, right? Without help, it is too much for us. But there is one who has all power, so unlimited power. And they say it right out. That one is God. May you find him now. God, not a group. I've heard that, oh, God stands for group of drunks. No, it does not. That's clearly not how they're referring to God. They're talking about one who has all power. That one is God. And then it's like their prayer for us. May you find him now. Half measures availed us nothing. Well, we all know if we get a 50% on a test, we flunk. We stood at the turning point. We asked God's protection and care with complete abandon. So there's some more clues about God. He'll protect us and he'll care for us. But complete abandon, that means I have to give God 100% of myself, not like 20%, 100%. Protection and care, and I've probably given this example before, but those words protection and care make me think of it. That in the middle school social studies, we learned about like the kings who had serfs working the land, and the king took care of them, right? The serfs were under his protection and care. So when invaders came, the king's army would protect everyone. But then let's say one of the serfs wanders off the king's land out of, I don't know, self-will, resentment, things that make us wander off. And then when the invading army comes, the person isn't protected, not because the king doesn't care, but because the serf decided he didn't want to stay on the king's land. But our king, our God, is so good. Not only does he take people back when they come back, I believe he launches search and rescue programs to bring them back. So we asked his protection and care with complete abandon. So when we understand God, that gets easy, right? Who wouldn't want the loving creator of the universe to care for and protect me? Here are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery. Now, suggested doesn't mean optional, that some of them are optional. This is an entire program that's suggested. And if we're going to do it, we need to do it all. So, Catherine, could you read the steps for us, please? Oh, I have to unmute you. Sorry. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you. 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. We came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. 4, we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, we admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for the knowledge of his will for us and our power and the power to carry that out. And 12, over the page, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Thank you.
Thank you. So I have a note, something I heard once I thought was really pretty. The first 9 steps unblock our channel to God. Then step 10, we unblock it from the wreckage we've caused during the day. Step 11, through prayer and meditation, we fill the channel. And step 12, the channel of grace overflows to others. Not pretty? So those are our steps. And note where we start off. We admit we're powerless over food and our lives are unmanageable. And then we just it's really 60 pages in this book. And what's the result? Having had a spiritual awakening. Remember that? The great fact is just this and nothing less, that we've had deep and effective spiritual experiences which have revolutionized our whole attitude toward life, toward our fellows, and towards our Creator. The central fact of our lives is that our Creator has entered into our hearts and lives in a way which is miraculous and has commenced to accomplish for us what we could never accomplish for ourselves. That's where we end up if we do this work. Okay, then we're on page 60. Many of us exclaimed, "What an order! I can't go through with it." Don't be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. And what principles are they talking about? Well, all through the book, there is a list of spiritual principles. There's lots of them in the chapter Family Afterwards on principles for our home, and To Employers, principles that we can practice at work. In my book, I have just in the margins places, principle, principle, principle. one of my sponsees made a list of all the principles in the big book. They're on our website. Steph, could you put a link to that, please? Okay, so that will be in the chat. It says, we are not saints. That may be the only untrue line in the big book. The people who wrote this book, I think they're pretty close to saints. The point is, we're willing to grow along spiritual lines. And then it says, we claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. You all, please don't ever use that line with respect to your eating and say, well, it's progress, not perfection. You know, I binged twice this week, but last week I binged 5 times, so it's progress. Can you imagine someone at an AA meeting saying, I only got drunk twice this week, but you know, last week it was 3 times, so yay, it's progress. No, they're talking about spiritual progress. So how do we know if we're making spiritual progress, right? We should always be making spiritual progress. So let's say when I start, if I get a resentment and it takes me 3 days to like get over the resentment, well, then it should start taking 2 days and then 1 day and then an hour. You know, if we're working this program, we should see that we are able to resolve resentments and fears and make amends for any wreckage we caused a lot more quickly. We should always be looking for spiritual progress, right? We always want to be growing spiritually, looking for an area of our life where we're not doing well, that's like our Achilles heel, and think, how could I do better? Do I need to pray about this area? Do I need to, you know, figure out new techniques? We always want to be growing spiritually. Our description of we'll say compulsive eater, the chapter to the agnostic, and our personal adventures before and after make clear 3 pertinent ideas. So these are things we need to ask ourselves. Do I believe that I'm a compulsive eater and can't manage my own life? Well, usually that's easy and everyone's like, yes. B, that probably no human power could have relieved our compulsive eating. Well, that's pretty easy too. I mean, for me, the only way a human power could have relieved my compulsive eating was lock and key. If they locked me in a room and put, you know, gave me a tray of food when it was time to eat. No human power. No matter how much people in a group love us and support us, they can't supply us with power. So people can generally concede, yes, I believe I'm a compulsive eater, can't manage my own life. I believe no human power could relieve my compulsive eating. But C is where we get tripped up. And it's very important that we make sure that we have it, because the next line after that is being convinced we were at step 3. So we need to be convinced that God could and would relieve our compulsive eating if he were sought. And sometimes people blow right through this and say yes, but I think most people don't. So we're going to break it down a little bit. So first, I would start by asking someone, do you believe that God exists? And okay, by this point, you know, if they've talked with their sponsor for a while and gone through this book, yes, I believe God exists. Do you believe that God could restore other people to sanity? Well, I mean, they've seen it, right? Lots of people have done this work and been restored to sanity. Yes. Do you believe he could restore you personally to sanity if he wanted to? He may not want to, but could he if he wanted to? And then people generally hesitate a second and they'd say, well, okay, yeah, he's God. He's restored other people. He could restore me if he wanted to. And then I say, do you believe he will if you seek him? And that's when a lot of people say no. If they're honest and think about it, they say no. He exists. He has restored other people to sanity. He could restore me to sanity if he wanted to, but he won't. And so then I ask, okay, legit feeling, why? Why won't he restore you personally to sanity? And I have found that people have one of 5 reasons. I haven't come up with anything else. One of 5 reasons. One is I've done some really bad things. The second is not so much I've done bad things, but just a general feeling of I'm not worth it. Like shame. The first one is guilt. The second one is more shame, feeling not worthy. The third is I've tried it so many times before and it hasn't worked. The fourth is it's my fault I have this illness and that I haven't gotten better, so I really can't go to God. And the fifth is I'm not willing to do the work to seek him. Okay, to someone who says it's the fifth thing, I'm not willing to do the work, I tell that person, you're right. No guarantee that God's going to restore you to sanity, right? It says, if he were sought, if I'm not seeking him, I'm not told I'll find him. And that is why I tell my sponsees they have to spend at least 30 minutes every morning with God, seeking God, prayer, meditation, spiritual reading, learning about him, but more important, connecting with him. Write your prayers out to him if you have to, like connect. Okay, so let's talk about the other four people. The person who says, I've done some really bad stuff. Well, that one's easy. We can say, you're in great company. So did the founders of AA. That's why there's an 8th and a 9th step in this program. We get a chance to make amends for all the bad stuff we've done. Even if we've robbed banks, we can make amends. Number 2, and I find this is the most common one, I'm not worthy. So for that, I say there's like 2 things we can do. One, you can like go to therapy and spend like $10,000 or 10,000 pounds or whatever your currency is to try and have a therapist convince you that you are worthy. Or you could just accept that worthiness isn't a requirement. It's not a requirement. Nowhere in this book will you see you have to be worthy. Only willingness is a requirement. I certainly was not worthy of all that God did for me and all that he continues to do for me. I know I lead meetings, I lead workshops, whatever. I am not worthy of what he does for me, but I'm willing to like be an instrument in his hands. That's all that he requires, that we're willing. We don't have to be worthy. And something funny happens as we start working these steps. We no longer think about whether or not we're worthy. We no longer think about like, oh, do I have good self-esteem or bad self-esteem, or, do I deserve it? We don't even think about, we just think about connecting with God and helping other people. Like we're not focused on ourselves and our worthiness so much. But if you don't feel worthy, it's okay. You're in the same boat as I am. It's okay. We don't have to be worthy. We just have to be willing. Third thing, I've tried this so many times before and it hasn't worked. So I always think about my cell phone. If I'm trying to take a picture and I try for 6.5 years, but I'm pressing the on off button and never get a picture. And then let's say my son walks up to me and says, Mom, you're pushing the wrong button, and shows me the right button. It doesn't matter if it's my first day with a cell phone or I've had a cell phone for 20 years trying to take pictures. If I'm shown the right button to push and I'm willing to do it, I can take pictures. And then the person who says, well, this is my problem. God's got bigger things to worry about, and it's like my fault. I mean, we can debate whether we caused this or we were born with it. The book is very unclear, but let's say it's our fault that we have this illness. So let's assume, okay, it's my fault. I was so selfish and self-centered. I've ruined my life. I really can't go to God. So I think about if I have my cell phone, which I now can take pictures on, and I'm crossing the street and I'm on my phone and I get hit by a truck and both my legs are broken and the ambulance comes, well, truthfully, would any of us ever say, don't take me to the hospital to get my broken legs fixed? It's my fault I got hit by a truck. Just leave me here. Of course not. Even if it's our fault, we say, help me. Take me to the best surgeon who can help me. But when it comes to God, we're not like that. We're not like, my life is a mess. Like, God, you're the best. Help me. We get like all noble, like, I don't want to bother God. It's okay. We can bother God. It's okay. So, in the question part later, if there's anyone here who still does not feel that God could restore him or her to sanity, please ask, because maybe there's a sixth reason I haven't come up with. But I think generally it's because we feel we're not worthy. We don't have to be worthy. It's fine. So next, being convinced. So being convinced that God not only can, but will restore me personally to sanity if I continue on with this work, which is how I seek him. It says, we are now at step 3. We should always know what step we're on. Step 3, which is that we decided. So again, a decision to turn our will and our life over to God as we understood him. My will, that means I'm going to be obedient to him. I'm going to surrender. And my life, I'm just going to trust him with the outcomes. It says, okay, what do we mean by that? And what do we do? And by the way, so I'm going to ask Stephanie now to read the next 2 paragraphs in the first person. And I'd like to say this, if you ever have a resentment, read these 2 paragraphs out loud in the first person. It is like putting a pin in the balloon of a resentment, because these paragraphs talk about how we run on self-will. And the first time someone read it to me with my name in it, it was like a dagger to my heart. So go ahead, Steph.
All right. The first requirement is that I be convinced that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. On that basis, I am almost always in collision with something or somebody, even though my motives are good. I try to live by self-propulsion. I am like an actor who wants to run the whole show, is forever trying to arrange the lights, the ballet, the scenery, and the rest of the players in my own way. If my arrangements would only stay put, if only people would do as I wished, the show would be great. Everybody, including me, would be pleased. Life would be wonderful. In trying to make these arrangements, I may sometimes be quite virtuous. I may be kind, considerate, patient, generous, even modest and self-sacrificing. On the other hand, I may be mean, egotistical, selfish, and dishonest. But as with most humans, I am more likely to have varied traits. And what usually happens, the show doesn't come off very well. I begin to think life doesn't treat me right. I decide to exert myself more. I become, on the next occasion, still more demanding or gracious, as the case may be. Still, the play does not suit me. Admitting I may be somewhat at fault, I am sure that other people are more to blame. I become angry, indignant, self-pitying. What is my basic trouble? Am I not really a self-seeker even when trying to be kind? Am I not a victim of the delusion that I can wrest satisfaction and happiness out of this world if I only manage well? Is it not evident to all the rest of the players that these are the things I want? And do not my actions make each of them wish to retaliate, snatching all they can out of the show? Am I not, even in my best moments, a producer of confusion rather than harmony?
Ooh, did anyone just feel like, uh-oh, that's me here? So what are they talking about? They're saying that even when our motives are good, we're trying to kind of rule the world and get everything to work right. And they say, what is our basic trouble? We're self-seekers even when trying to be kind. So this program okay, so normally we have goals, and the goals might be good ones, like get my husband to stop smoking, make sure my kids go to church even once they're off to college. But they're my goals, and that's radically different if my goal is simply to do God's will. So let's take the example of wanting kids who go to church even after they're launched and they're off in college. So if that's my goal, when I'm little, I take them to church, I stress the importance of it. And then when they go off to college, if that's my goal to make sure they're going to church, I'm going to nag them. I'm going to get resentful. I'm going to get fearful. What if they don't go to church? And I'm going to maybe get manipulative because my goal isn't reached. But if my goal is simply to do God's will, it's a little different. So I may raise them the exact same way, take them to church every week, stress the importance of it. But once they go off on their own, I'm less likely to get mad, afraid, get manipulative, because really, whether they go to church or not is not my goal and not my business. My only goal is doing God's will. So if I could stand before God and say, I think I raised them the way you wanted me to with respect to church attendance, whether or not they go, I am happy anyway, and I am safe and secure in the knowledge that I have done God's will. So what it really means is that we have on top of all anything we want, we have an uber goal, which is to do God's will and just trust him with the outcomes. As far as church attendance, my kids sometimes go, sometimes not. I don't know. I don't really ask them anymore. It's not my business. It's their business. I can pray, but I don't worry about it because my job is to do God's will. And that's it. And it makes life so much simpler. When my husband was smoking, and our kids were little, I actually asked him, I told him, I don't like that you smoke. How often can I tell you that? And I actually asked him to tell me how often it was okay to mention that to him. And I just said, okay, you're smoking. We have little kids. We need an insurance policy in case something happens to you, right? I have to take care of my family, but I do not get to control my husband. And he actually told me, I will stop when I'm 50. The day before his 51st birthday was his last cigarette. So it's been 16 years now. But during all those years he smoked, I didn't worry about it because my job was not to get him to stop smoking. Again, it was my job to protect my family in case something happened to him. Did that, didn't nag him. I don't need other people to change for me to be happy. So at this point, I generally ask my sponsees to just make a list of anything they're not sure they're ready to surrender to God. So it might be their body image, their food plan, the desire to be married, the desire to have children, how our children are doing, right? We have to look at anything we are not willing to surrender and then really talk about it with our sponsors and pray about it. And what surrender means is that we're committed to doing the right thing and leaving the results up to God. Okay, so then it goes on more about our actor. It says, our actor, we're bottom of 61, our actor is self-centered, egocentric, as we call it nowadays. He is like the retired businessman who lolls in the Florida sunshine in the winter, complaining of the sad state of the nations. The minister who sighs over the sins of the 20th century. Politicians and reformers who are sure everything would be utopia, page 62, if the rest of the world behaved. The outlaw safecracker who says society has wronged me. The alcoholic who's lost all and is locked up. So they give 5 examples. And they say, whatever we're protesting about, aren't we really concerned with ourselves, our resentments, or our self-pity? Even like the minister and the politicians there, they're pointing at other people who aren't living life correctly. And what this program requires is that we just look for what is my role and we do it. And our role may be to get into politics, to write a letter to our politicians. It may be to do that. But I have to say, what is my role? I can't sit there and complain. So one of my big things is like human trafficking. That one just kills me. So what do? Every day, I pray for the people who've been trafficked that they get out. And I pray for the traffickers that they have a conversion and a change of heart so that their soul is okay and that then they'll help others. And I give money to an organization that works to fight human trafficking. And so I don't worry about it. I pray and I give money as I feel led to. Okay, then they tell us selfishness, self-centeredness. That we think is the root of our troubles, the root. So if you think of a tree or a plant, the roots are underground. We don't see them. But there it is, selfishness and self-centeredness. People don't always see it, but they see the fruit. And what are the fruits of this illness? Resentment, fear, and harm. So like 3 apples on a tree, resentment, fear, and harms. That's what people see. Driven by 100 forms, fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity, we step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate it. If I were to nag my kids about going to church, that would be stepping on our toes. And how would they retaliate? Giving me the silent treatment, not wanting a relationship with me. So we have to be careful not to step on other people's toes. And so sometimes people hurt us without us doing anything, but almost always we find we've made decisions based on ourselves that placed us in a position to be hurt emotionally. Often we make decisions based on self. So here's a recent one with me, not very proud of. My son is not very good with money, and we know this. He borrowed some money from his sister, didn't pay her back for the longest time, and I know this about him. And a couple weeks ago, he called me, said, I need $350 for rent. I get paid in 2 days. I'll pay you back in 2 days. And I didn't want to feel uncomfortable knowing that he wouldn't have his rent money. So I gave him the money, haven't got it back. You know, excuse that here, excuse there, started getting resentful. And I said, what is my part? My part is not to compare him to a dog, but it's like if a dog keeps biting you and then you expect him not to bite, well, it's your fault for going near the dog. I have a child who doesn't handle money well and doesn't pay back, and I lent him money for selfish reasons because I didn't want to live in the discomfort of thinking, oh my gosh, how's he going to pay his rent? How he pays his rent should not be my problem. So it was my decision based on self, wanting to be emotionally comfortable, that then placed me in the position where then I had a resentment that I had to work through. Okay, so we have to be careful about the decisions we make. It says our troubles, we think, are basically of our own making. Exceptions here. If someone is raped or molested or robbed at gunpoint, that person does not have a part. Let's be clear. Let's not, when we're sponsors and someone's doing a 5th step and said, I was raped, let's not turn to them and say, well, what was your part? But most of our resentments aren't like that. So we have to look for our part. And they tell us above everything, we have to be rid of selfishness or it kills us. And they say God makes that possible. There seems no way of entirely getting rid of self without his aid. So even if I know that selfishness is my problem and unselfishness is my solution, I can't be unselfish on my own. Why? Because I don't have the power. I need an infusion of God's power. And God doesn't give it to me just because I say, God, please help me be unselfish. I have to surrender everything to God. It's like, God, I'll give you my whole life. I'll do whatever you want. Then he'll help us be unselfish. It says we had moral and philosophical convictions galore. We couldn't even live up to our own values. Neither could we reduce our self-centeredness much by wishing or trying on our own power. I can't just say I want to be not self-centered. I have to be centered around something or someone else. I have to change what I center my life around. And then they say, okay, here's how. This is the how and why of it. 1, we had to quit playing God. Why? Because it's like offensive to God? Maybe, but that's not the reason they give. It didn't work. I'm so unqualified for the job, right? So we have to quit playing God. Next, we decided that God was going to be our director. I mean, I could quit playing God and let my kids, my husband, a guru be my director. They say, no, it has to be God. And then they talk about who God is. God is the principal. We are his agents. So remember back on page 49, they talked about us being intelligent agents, spearheads of God's ever-advancing creation. He's the principal, we're his agents. Well, that sounds a little impersonal, right? I mean, for my boss, he's the principal, he's his agent. But then the next line, he is the Father, and we are his children. He is the loving Father, and we are his beloved children. So it's like, I can't be God. I have to surrender my life to God, and God is going to be my director and my loving Father. It said most good ideas are simple. I mean, that's kind of simple, but of course, we always overcomplicate things, right? And this concept was the keystone of the new and triumphant arch through which we pass to freedom. And then it tells us, top of page 63, the third step promises. So remember in step 2, we got a little bit of power. Now here's step 3 promises. When we sincerely took such a position, the position of surrendering everything to God, all sorts of remarkable things followed. We had a new employer with a capital E. So my employer gives me what I need to do my job. He gives me a computer, he gives me whatever I need. Being all powerful, he provided what we need if, so 2 conditions, we kept close to him, one-on-one time, concentrated time in the morning. When people say, oh, I talk to God all throughout the day, but don't have concentrated time. No, both time in the morning and all through the day. We have to keep close to him and perform his work well. That's it. Established on this footing, here's the results. Automatically, we become less and less interested in ourselves, our little plans and designs. Well, less and less interested in ourselves. So what's going to fill our brains? More and more, we become interested in seeing what we could contribute to life. As we felt new power flow in. So guys, remember we got a little power in step 2. Now we're getting more. As we felt new power flow in, as we enjoyed peace, right? Didn't we need that peace of mind? As we discovered we could face life successfully, we became conscious of God's presence, and we began to lose our fear of today, tomorrow, or the hereafter, like losing our fear of like going to hell. We were reborn, new people, part of God's creations. We're now at step 3. Many of us said to our maker. So that's another name for God. They use our maker as we understood him. God, I offer myself to thee to build with me and do with me as thou wilt. God, take the raw material of me, everything I've messed up, all I am, my talents, my good points, my bad points, take it all and build with me and then do with me whatever you want. So I can't complain if I offer myself to God and, things are a little hard. I've given him the right to do with me whatever he wants. Relieve me of the bondage of self, right? Get rid of like my bondage of selfishness. Why? So my life will be easy peasy? No. So I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties. Why? So life will be great? It is great, but here's why we ask. That victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of 3 things. God's power, that he's strong enough to do this. God's love, that he loves me enough to do this. And God's way of life, that he has a way I can live. And then we end with the prayer, may I do thy will always. And it says, we really think, we make sure, we're at last ready to abandon ourselves utterly to him. And it says, if we do this honestly, in effect, sometimes a very great one was felt at once. And I always tell my sponsees, once they do this step, you're now consecrated. Consecrated means like set apart for God's use. Like what a great way to just like redeem a wretch like me. And that's what this program gives us. And that is all I have.